Hi there, I'm Rebecca and a really warm welcome back to my channel, PumpkinBecki. We are currently in the middle of Storm George, spelt with a J for some reason. Not that it looks like it from outside. We are in the middle of a brief respite of the wind, rain, sleet, hail, snow that we have had all just this morning. It's been quite exciting. So I decided I didn't want to go out in the garden today. It's too cold. Ground's like pudding. But instead I thought we would do a book review of Morten Albek's new book, Shohin Through the Seasons. Let's get started. If you've never come across Morten Albek before, he is a Danish bonsai practitioner, and he particularly specialises in one of the smallest sizes of bonsai, Shohin, which measure no more than 20 centimetres from the top of the soil surface to the top of the crown of the tree. So that's usually measured like that. Though obviously everybody has a different hand size, but apparently that's the rule of thumb they use. All the trees featured in this book are Morten's own trees. He doesn't create trees to sell them. They're his trees. He keeps them in his collection at home in Denmark. And you do get a sense from both reading the book and watching the videos that he produces how deeply connected he is to his trees. He tends them 2-3 times a day. He loves spending time in his bonsai garden, which is really beautiful. You should go and watch his videos. I'll leave links. There's something so serene about his bonsai garden. I can completely understand why he loves spending time there. I pre-ordered this book through Morten's French publisher, LR Presse. Doesn't have an accent on the last E. And they're going to be on sale at an exhibition which is taking place actually this weekend as we speak. And I think Morten said he was going to sign them as well if you saw him at the exhibition. First impressions of the book is very nice. I was slightly disappointed when it came that the corner was dented. This wasn't a cheap book. I think it was £30 plus shipping, and for it to have come packed to a point where the corner could get dented, and actually the front corner as well has a bit of a turn on it, that disappoints me. But I am the kind of reader who will really open a book and break its spine so that I can really see a book and get involved in it. So maybe it doesn't matter that much. The photograph is beautiful. It's all really lovely and clear. The only thing I'm not that fussed on is this all the secrets bit of text on the front. I think it doesn't really add very much. It's a bit distracting. You can see it's got a kind of distressed font which doesn't really match with any of the other much crisper fonts used. It's just too many fonts going on one thing. The book is divided into seasons and the work that is involved in each of those seasons. So Morten has taken all his trees and looked at everything he needs to do to all of them, regardless of their species, whether they're evergreen, deciduous, flowering. He's just looked at all of them in that season, and then he gives you details for each different sort of tree. He talks about feeding, wiring. He talks about repotting, tools, all the basic things you would expect to see in a good bonsai book. But he doesn't go really basic. You know, at the front of books you often get the section, and it's a generic kind of beginning. They could almost have copy and pasted it out of the last bonsai book. Bonsai was first practiced in China, blah blah blah, then it moved to Japan in blah blah blah. Bonsai means plant in a tray, blah blah blah. Here's the scissors you're going to need, here are the wire cutters you're going to need. He doesn't go to that level. I think if you have found yourself looking at Shohin as a specific group of trees that you're interested in, then you already know that. But he does give an overview. This section slightly worries me. He has done a video on it, and it is about making a forest from Acer campestre, or field maple. And he's saying that he's collected them from a local forest. But he doesn't say, please make sure you've got permission to do that. So I'll say it now. Don't just go and dig up plants from the wild or from somebody else's woodland. Please ask permission first. You know, it's against the law. And in that particular section he takes you through the potting, arranging, and then the final overview of the group of trees. This is a forest planting, as I say, and that's 4 months later once all the leaves have come out. So that's nice. It's a nice study, but he doesn't treat the rest of the book in that linear pattern. It is, as I say, broken into the seasons. Some of the titling is a little bit strange. Titling the sections, here's the one that I don't quite understand. This section is entitled Soils, so you would expect it to talk about the sorts of soils he uses for his Shohin, and I don't know, maybe the scale of particles, what actual components he uses, but it's literally one paragraph, and then he moves on to a different subject on the next page. That perplexed me a bit, and then I remembered that he had mentioned something about the soil components he was using when he was planting up the group of Acer campestre on page 22. But again, it's literally one paragraph. Considering how up in the air some people get about soil and the things that it should and should not contain, it surprises me that that's all he refers to. There isn't a section at the back that goes into more detail. That is basically it. And as repotting happens in the spring, and this is the spring section. Still in spring, Morten starts to look at a Japanese maple that he has. We sort of start around page 55, and he talks about pinching the scales from buds to reduce the length of the new growth that's going to come out in spring. Very nice shot of his maple there. Then you get to page 58, and he describes the process in photographs 1, 2 and 3. Excellent. He talks on the next page about pinching deciduous trees. Then he goes on to flower control. Then on page 60 he bounces back to a step-by-step of defoliating a tree without any real introduction to the idea of defoliation. To go from a non-flowering, traditionally flowering tree like a maple, bounce off into the subject of flowering and whether you need to control the amount of flowers a tree has, and then bounce back to another maple, perhaps even the same maple. That threw me. I had to do a bit of page flicking to get my head around that, especially as the flower control text flows across from the previous page into this section here next to the photographs of defoliation. On a couple of pages, and it's particularly obvious here on page 94, I've got some speckling, which is from the printing process, I think. That's a pity. All the photos are lovely and clear. It's just some odd printing blemishes, I suppose you'd call them. Throughout the book there are no illustrations as to the horticultural practices that he's discussing. He does photograph them, and as I've said, his photographs are lovely, but you don't quite get enough detail from those photographs. I'm going to show you this one from page 109, and in it he is talking about removing the new growth on a pine right back, but it's actually really hard to tell what that new growth was, where it's coming from. For me, it's not descriptive enough, and even when you move over the page to the next photographs, they still don't exactly give you enough detail to really understand what he's mechanically done there. And it's not that he avoids illustrations altogether. When you get to the back of the book and you start looking at display, he very clearly illustrates the traditional way and the meaning behind some of the display decisions. Maybe when you see Shohin exhibitions, you will have seen trees displayed on tables, on platforms, but normally there's a whole collection of trees and supporting material, and he's illustrated that really well, and it explains it beautifully. So why there weren't any illustrations elsewhere, not quite sure. Maybe again he didn't want to go right back to basics for people. And if there's one bugbear I have with all the bonsai books I have read, including this one, it is using phrases and terms, giving perhaps one example of, and then moving on, as if you're then meant to be able to know exactly how that applies to everything else you might own. For example, here on page 110, he says, one flush pines like Scots pine, Pinus sylvestris, are not fed while the new needles unfold. Okay, then he says, two flush pines might need more energy. But he doesn't give any examples of two flush pines, and he only gives one example of one or single flush pines. So how are you meant to know what the others might be? As our understanding of bonsai in the West grows more and more, I think there should somewhere be a list or a table of attributes that species have. And I know, alright, there's a ridiculous number of species of tree, but there has to be a way of breaking it down. And you have the species name, and that it's deciduous or coniferous, that it's flowering or fruiting, that it's single flush, multiple flush, and then you can cross-reference and apply that in the information that's given here, which is great information, but apply it to the rest of your collection of trees. Morten is a very modest man, but he is inarguably a huge force in the miniature world of Shohin. You can hear Morten's voice pouring out of the pages of this book. His native Danish is soft and lyrical and calming, though I was slightly alarmed by the phrase, as a bonsai practitioner, one has to simultaneously control 2 jobs simultaneously. Scary. English is not Morten's first language, though he is very proficient at it. But as you're reading him, you'll trip on the odd little phrasing that doesn't quite sound right. But that's nice. That's him. Would I recommend this book? Yes, I would. Morten's knowledge is undeniable, and his skill. He doesn't just know, he can do as well. And I think this book actually makes a really lovely companion to his series of videos that he has made. He was trying to set up a video classes, a paper class kind of arrangement, but that seems to have died a death, which is a shame, but he is still producing videos for YouTube, and I think you can access them from his website as well. Yes, that would make sense. And you'll recognise trees, and you'll recognise work that he has done for his YouTube videos being depicted here in the book. Morten's trees are exquisite, and you only get a real sense of the scale and the detail and the amount of work that's gone into them when you see a photograph of him and one of his trees in his hand. Take a look at this Shinpaku juniper, for example. Look at the dead wood, look at the detail. The whole presentation, it looks like one of those enormous trees that you see that maybe Mr. Kimura has created. It's amazing. But you look at the page beforehand and you see it in Morten's hand and you realise how tiny it is. And he explains very explicitly that that's not something instant. That is something that you can only get through time. I think if you're interested in the even smaller side of bonsai, then this book is for you. I think there is a misconception with Shohin that because they are smaller trees, they will be less work or easier to work than a large bonsai. But I think Morten in this book, and also with his videos, he makes it seem less scary. And I'm delighted that I bought this book. I think it is going to really help inform my general bonsai work and maybe help me develop some of my trees into Shohin, which would be amazing. Right, that's it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to rate, share and subscribe to me here on YouTube. And until next time, bye.